economic crisis for decades, we chose to go it together with Next Generation EU. And in the gravest planetary crisis of all time, again, we chose, because the speed of the events and the enormity of the challenges are sometimes very difficult to grasp. And this has also been a time of soul searching. People are re-evaluating their own lives. We are having wider debates on shared vaccines and shared values. But as I look back on this past year, and if I look at the State of the Union today, I see a strong soul in everything what we do. It was Robert Schuman who said, Europe needs a soul, an ideal, and the political will to serve this ideal. And Europe has brought those words to life in the last 12 months. In the biggest global health crisis for a century, we chose to go it together so that every part of Europe had access to the life-saving vaccine. In the deepest global economic crisis for decades, we chose to go it together with Next Generation EU. And in the gravest planetary crisis of all time, again, we chose to go it together with the European Green Deal. We did it together as a Commission, and I think from the bottom of my heart, my outstanding College of Commissioners for the enormous support during that time. We did it together as a Parliament with 27 member states, as one Europe, and I think we can be proud of it. Corona times are not over, and there's still much grief in our society as the pandemic lingers. There are hearts we can never mend, life stories we can never finish, and time we can never give back to our young. We face new and enduring challenges in a world recovering and fracturing unevenly. So there's no question, the next year will be another test of character. But I believe it is when you are tested that your spirit, your soul truly shines through. And as I look across our union, I know that Europe will pass the test. And what gives me that confidence is the inspiration we can draw from Europe's young people. Because our youth put meaning into empathy and solidarity. They believe we have a responsibility towards the planet. And while they are anxious about the future, they are determined to make it better. Our union will be stronger if it is more like our next generation, reflective, determined, and caring, grounded in values and bold in action. And this spirit will be more important than ever over the next 12 months. This is the message in the letter of intent I sent this morning to President Sassoli and Prime Minister Jansa to outline our priorities for the year ahead. Honorable members, a year is long at the time of pandemics. When I stood here in front of you 12 months ago, I did not know when or even if we could have a safe and effective vaccine against COVID-19. But today, against all critics, Europe is among the world leaders. More than 70% of our adult population is fully vaccinated. We were the only ones to share half of our vaccine production with the rest of the world. We delivered more than 700 million doses of vaccines to the Europeans. We delivered Indeed, we delivered also more than 700 million to the rest of the world, to more than 130 countries. And we are the only region in the world to achieve that. Honorable members, a pandemic is a marathon, it's not a sprint. We followed the science, we delivered to Europe, we delivered to the rest of the world. We did it the right way because we did it the European way, and I think it worked. But while we have every reason to be confident, we have no reason to be complacent. Our first and most urgent priority is to speed up global vaccination. With less than 1% of global doses administered in low-income countries, the scale of injustice and the level of urgency is obvious. This is one of the great geopolitical issues in our time. Team Europe is investing €1 billion to ramp up mRNA production capacity with Africa. We have already committed to share 250 million doses of vaccine. I can announce today that the Commission will add a new donation of another 200 million doses until the middle of next year. This is an investment in solidarity, and it is an investment also in global health. The second priority is to continue our efforts here in Europe. We see worrisome divergences between member states where vaccination rates are concerned. So we need to keep up the momentum. And Europe is ready. We have 1.8 billion additional doses secured. This is enough for us and our neighborhood when booster shots are needed. So let's do everything possible that this does not turn into a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And my third point, the final priority, is to strengthen our pandemic preparedness. Last year, I said it was time to build a European health union. Today, we are delivering. With our proposal, we get the HERA authority up and running. This will be a huge asset to deal with future health threats earlier and better. We have the innovation and scientific capacity. We have the private sector knowledge. We have competent national authorities. And now we have to bring all that together, including massive funding. So I am proposing a new health preparedness and resilience mission for the whole of the European Union. And it should be backed up by Team Europe investment of 50 billion by 2027 to make sure that no virus will ever turn a local epidemic again in a global pandemic. There is no better return on investment than that. Honorable members, the work on the European Health Union is a big step forward. And I want to thank this House for your support. We have shown that when we act together, we can act fast. Take the EU digital certificate. Today, more than 400 million certificates have been generated across Europe. 42 countries in 4 different continents are plugged in. We proposed it in March. You pushed hard, you helped enormously. 3 months later only, it was up and running. So while the rest of the world was talking about, Europe just did it.
Aw, isn't that pretty? Okay, hi everyone. And so let's go to the Cyber Campus site and make sure you can see that. So share screen and make sure we do our smart attendance, and attendance is add and smart attendance, and your number is 537. 537 is your smart attendance number, 537. And so let me go back and that was strange. 537. Something seems to have happened there because it didn't do any time. So let me.
Sir, I can see the box.
537. So I don't know what they make of that. That's the first time that's happened. So, okay, well, let me see who's here. Let me go ahead and put that in the number in the chat box. And 537. And I can correct that manually if there's some kind of problem. So I see Marie, UJE, Aun Tech, and Kang Tong Un. So I can just do that myself right now. Marie, UJE, and Kang Tong Un. Okay. So those are the people that are so far listed as attending. And okay, so that's corrected. And let's now go look at the assignments. And again, I want to make sure that you can see this. So make sure we call that up, share screen, assignments. That's it. There we go. Okay, and so you can see, of course, your midterm, your first draft of your midterm is due tomorrow morning. And so that I can start writing comments and sending them back. And again, the question is, what are the major obstacles to developing a primary European identity? And can Europe be more like the US, where an overarching American identity trumps regional identities? And so your first draft, again, is due tomorrow morning. And so I will spend the next couple of days, few days, going through all of the midterms for the 3 classes I have. And then also next week, we will schedule through Google Files the individual Zoom sessions that we will have during week 8. So not next week, but the following week, I will meet with you individually on Zoom for 30 minutes to talk about your midterm for the class. And we will sign up for a Zoom session the same way you signed up for debate on Google Drive using Google Documents, right? So if I go to my Google account here and show it to you, just remind you on your regarding the European Union policymaking class, that you can see here that, again, I want to make sure you can see this because it says stop share, but I don't know if it's really sharing. But okay, so this is the sign up session for the debates. So I'll do something like this. I'll make a file and post it on Google Drive so you can sign up next week for your individual conference sessions to discuss the comments that I'm going to write on your midterm drafts that you're going to send me tomorrow. And speaking of Google Docs and using the files, you can see we also have our first debate. Yay, our first debate, student debate this semester with Marie Khan on the question, the euro is equal to the US dollar as one of the world's global currencies. So I'm going to be pro, and Marie's going to be con on that. And so we'll make sure that we devote enough time for that we don't go too long. So we have at least half an hour for that debate. And typically I like to do the debates during the second half of the class. And so I have to make sure we go back to that. Okay, so let me stop the share and go back to share screen for other items that we have here. So yeah, here again is the lesson plan. And let me also open up the notes I have and the exercises I want to do for this week's, this class's meeting. And so let me get that open up. And so what do I want to go with first? Let's go with the migration crisis issue. And let me make sure that you can see this. So screen share. And so I have a question for you. And that question is, do you think at least one more state will leave the European Union? Will at least one more state leave the European Union? And so let me divide you into, well, let me see who's here today. And go to breakout rooms. And so we have 4 people. So maybe I just make 2 groups and assign automatically. And so, okay, so those are your 2 groups. Tell me what your response, if you think that the European Union, at least one more country like the United Kingdom, one more country will leave the European Union. And so please join those groups. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go back and add Owen Tech also as attending for the class today. So please join those groups. Please join your groups. And let me go back and fix the strange thing. So Owen Tech is here. So everybody's here. Okay. So go back to those groups and ask you to join those breakout rooms. And Kang Tong-un, please talk with Marie and come to an agreement on where your class, if you can, where your group fits in terms of whether or not you think in the future, at least one more state will leave the European Union. At least one more state will leave the European Union, like the Great Britain did, United Kingdom did early last year, officially beginning, of course, in 4 years earlier, in 2016. Do you think one more state will leave the European Union? And so I will write a position as well. And I will ask Admiral Lee to tell me what my position will be. And heads, it's 1 to 2, agree, and it's tails. So heads, it's neutral, and it's heads. So I'm neutral, cannot decide. So I am going to write a statement as well. And as neutral cannot decide. And I'll have to explain my position. I think that one of the so please communicate with each other, and let me assign some person to speak for each group. So heads, it's the top person listed on each group. And it is heads. So Owen Tech will speak for room 1 and Marie will speak for room 2 first, but everybody will speak because there's just a few people in the class. Okay, so let me go back to what we had earlier here and stop share. And okay, breakout rooms, close all rooms. Okay, so who's going to speak first? And heads is room one, and it is room one. So own tech, where did your group fit in terms of where it fits on the scale as to whether or not you think at least one more country will leave the European Union?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't think there will be a country withdrawing from the EU for at least a few years.
Uh-huh. What about beyond 3 years?
You know, in 2060, Britain was wait. In 2060, the Britain withdrew from the European Union, and they and eventually took a politically and economically different route from the European Union.
Uh-huh.
And recently they made a new economic and security community, not economic, the security communist in the UK, US, and Austria organization named AUKUS, and in the process of the creation of AUKUS, France literally destroyed a large submarine deal with Australia.
Uh-huh.
And the European Union has long been aware of the launch of the AUKUS just before it came with and announced its Indian Pacific cooperation strategy. And no country will be able to withdraw from the EU until the check on China is completely terminated in an atmosphere where claims to protect European security itself are strengthened.
Uh-huh. Okay. And Marie, for room two, what was your group's position on whether or not you think at least one more country will leave the European Union like Great Britain?
Yeah, we had the same as on tech. First, I thought that maybe like Poland was on the edge of leaving the EU, but then I looked it up and I just saw that they confirmed that they're not leaving the EU.
Uh-huh.
And I also think that no member states are doing well enough, like the UK, on their own to leave the EU right now. So that's why I don't think they will be leaving now and in the future.
Okay, and what about the other two class members? So that would be UJE. What do you have to say, UJE? Do you agree with own tech?
Yes, I agree with own tech.
Uh-huh. And Kang Tong-un, do you agree with Marie?
Yeah, I agree with her.
Okay, so the reason why this came to my mind again is because of this most recent news report. You know, the main reason, not the only reason, but the main reason why Britain left the European Union, or the main, not the main reason, but the main source of Brexit voter support for voting yes on United Kingdom leaving the European Union in 5 years ago during the Brexit referendum, the British exit vote in June 2016, was this fear and anxiety and anger about refugees coming into Britain, the many migration into Britain from many countries, including, as I said, hundreds of thousands, maybe up to 800,000 or more, just Polish people moving to Great Britain, but also the fear that lots of people coming from the Middle East, from Iraq, Syria, coming from Africa, that they were going to come into the European Union and then come to Britain through the European Union after they got into the European Union through Greece and Italy and Malta and Cyprus, the southern states, the southern border states with the European Union. And then Angela Merkel, while she was Prime Minister of Germany in 2015, 2016, agreed to accept over 1 million refugees who wanted to come to Germany or wanted to come to rich, prosperous parts of European Union. She accepted them rather than keep them locked or blocked in Greece and in Bulgaria and in the Eastern European countries where these migrants, these asylum seekers from the war in Syria and the violence in Iraq and other poverty-stricken places, they were coming into the European Union. And Angela Merkel did not want and did not believe the European Union would survive if she forced those migrants coming from the Middle East and Africa and Asia to stay in Eastern Europe. Of course, they were trying to get to the rich countries, Germany, Britain, Sweden, and also Norway, which is not part of the European Union, but is still integrated into the European economy, partly because many of them speak English, and these migrants speak English coming from former British colonies like Syria, like Iraq, and like many people speaking English, they wanted to come to Britain, but they also wanted to go any place where they could find a job. And the places where they could find a job in the European Union were the rich, prosperous Northern European countries, not so much Italy or Greece, more Germany, and of course, Britain and the Netherlands and Belgium, where there's more work opportunity. And so Nigel Farage and the United Kingdom Independence Party really emphasized that fear in their campaign to support voting to leave the European Union. And I showed you that video clip, right, where Nigel Farage is highlighting that fear from the, let me see if I can call up that image again, Google.com images, breaking point image. This was maybe the most striking racist picture in the Brexit campaign. And here you see Nigel Farage pointing to all of these non-white refugees. You don't see many Europeans here. You see people that look like they're coming from non-white countries. Breaking point. The EU has failed us, and we must break free of the European Union and take back control. So, and so the reason I ask you this question today about whether or not this might happen again is because we are on the verge of a new migration crisis into the European Union right now, highlighting here how not just because of the war in Afghanistan, in the United States' departure from Afghanistan, but also because the adversaries of the European Union in Moscow and in Minsk in Belarus are encouraging or accepting migrants coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, letting them come to Belarus, which has a border with Ukraine and Poland and Lithuania, and encouraging these people to come to Belarus and then walk across the country to the border with Poland and try to enter Poland and Lithuania and to try to ask for or claim asylum, protection from persecution in their home countries. And so you see the new arrivals. These include Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Nigeria, and Cameroon, have different stories, but a shared curriculum. They all purchased flights to Minsk, Belarus, with the promise that they would be taken to the European Union, only end up stranded in the woods. So the European Union has put sanctions on Alexander Lukashenko, who is the president of, I think you can see this, make sure you can see this, who is the president of Belarus. He is in conflict with the European Union because he is establishing a dictatorship, and he is throwing pro-democracy demonstrators in jail, and he is torturing people. His police are torturing people, and he's been ruling Belarus for it's got to be 25 years now. For 25 years, he's been the ruler, president, dictator, and he says he's encouraging or allowing these people to fly to Belarus, Minsk, and then moving them to the border with Poland and trying to push them across the border to Poland. So he's doing this in retaliation for European Union sanctions against this regime. He's reportedly luring people to Minsk and then depositing them at the country's borders with Poland. But the problem goes beyond Belarus. The Polish government, presenting itself as the nation's protector from invasion, has refused the migrants' entry, and in some cases actively pushed them back into the woods. So again, this isn't legal. This is not legal, really. According to the 1951 United Nations Refugee Convention, anyone has the right, you, me, to go to another country and try to enter that country and claim that we apply for asylum, that we can apply to stay in another country because we can claim that we suffer religious or political persecution back in our home countries, that our human rights are being violated, that we're being tortured or killed, and we can apply for asylum in that country, and that country has to hear our application, has to consider our application. They might reject the application. They might say I'm lying. If I go to Kyrgyzstan, and I go to Kyrgyzstan and I say I'm an American, but I think if I stay in America, I'm going to be thrown in jail because I think Joe Biden wants to, and his security police think I'm a terrorist. And the Kyrgyz government, any government around the world, has to accept my asylum claim and then rule on my asylum claim. And they can reject it. They can say it's ridiculous, but they have to accept my claim, then they have to process it, and then they have to make a judgment on it. And this was established in 1951 under the United Nations following the experience of World War II. So let me see what comes up here when I go to Wikipedia, and 1951 Asylum Convention. And this was formed after World War II because many people were trying to flee Europe during the Nazi period in Europe, and they would get in a boat, say, or a ship. So this is the convention relating to the status of refugees. The convention relating to the status of refugees, also in the 1951 Refugee Convention or the Geneva Convention of July 1951, is the United Nations multilateral treaty that defines who a refugee is and sets out the rights of individuals who are granted asylum and the responsibilities of the nation that grants that asylum. So just about most of the world belongs to it, although some countries have not ratified it, like India. And this was after the experience of World War II. So like many Jews were fleeing not German-occupied Europe or Nazi Germany, and they'd get in a ship and they would try to go to the United States, and the United States would say, no, we're not accepting refugees. We're not accepting people coming to our country who are fleeing Germany in the 1930s. No. And there was one case of a ship called the Struma, named after a river that was ran through my office town where I have my office at the American University in Bulgaria, in Blagoevgrad. There was a river called the Struma, and the ship was called the Struma. And there were individuals on the ship, and they were Jews, and they tried to go to the United States. The United States said, no, we don't want you. And then, so they went back to Europe, and I think they were sunk. They were sunk by a German torpedo boat, and everybody on the ship died. And that happened a number of times. And so this refugee convention was adopted after World War I, after World War II in 1951. And that is what many refugees coming from Mexico and the United States and refugees coming from the Middle East and Africa into the European Union, they're claiming asylum under this 1951 refugee convention. And according to this refugee convention, when they get to Greece, the Greek government has to take their application for asylum and then process the application. And it takes a long time. It typically takes years. And so according to international law, when these refugees come to Poland from Belarus, that the Polish government is supposed to accept them into the country, take their application and do something with these people. Like, at least like in Greece, they're keeping them in migration camps. They're keeping them in camps. They're not letting them just go into Greece and find a job or something like that. They have to stay in a camp, and they have to wait for their asylum application to be processed and to be either accepted or rejected. And it can take years. And so that's the law. But what we happen to see in reality is the Polish government border police, or I heard this morning, the Croatian government border police, because Croatia also is in the European Union. People are trying to come into Croatia and Poland from other countries, and the Polish police and the Croatian border police are beating them with clubs and pushing them back across the river or the border that they cross to try to get into Poland or to try to get into Croatia. And so this article is about Poland, and of course, this is technically not legal, according to the 1951 Refugee Convention. And it says, far from earning rebuke, Poland's approach has the backing of the European Union. So the European Union is accepting that the Polish police is just pushing these people back across the border. They're not accepting them. They're not processing their asylum claim. They're not doing that. It is, after all, more or less what the union has been doing for the last 5 years, the past 5 years, since 2016, of course, with the Brexit referendum in 2016. To avoid a repeat of the migrant crisis of 2015-16, when over 1 million people sought refuge in Europe, the bloc has tried to seal off the continent from another influx of people. And another influx is coming. Afghanistan is getting worse and worse and worse. And there's going to be a big movement of people. It's already started. And the concern is that, of course, that this is going to encourage more nationalist hostility in places like Hungary and Poland. So it goes on here in this news report from today, but these efforts, often draconian and brutal, have failed. In the aftermath of the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, as unrest continues across the world, more people will head for Europe. The next migrant crisis has arrived. With southern routes choked off, with Greece route and Italy choked off, the bloc's eastern neighbors become a major point of entry. Since August, there have been thousands of attempts to cross the Polish border outside official checkpoints. It's not just Poland, it's also Lithuania. It's a perilous undertaking. For almost 2 months, a group of 32 people from Afghanistan has been trapped near the Polish border village of Usnarz Gorny. These Afghans receive meager rations, lack fresh water, and according to aid workers, are losing strength and struggling to move. So it goes on in this news report. This is an editorial. This is in the New York Times today. Poland's response has been severe. The government ignored a ruling by the European Court of Human Rights, which is separate from the European Union. So the European Court of Human Rights is the European court that is part of the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is separate from the European Union. The Council of Europe was established in 1948 to focus on political human rights issues. And that was started before the European Coal and Steel Community came into being in 1952 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris that created the European Coal and Steel Community. So the Council of Europe is older by 4 or 5 years than the European Coal and Steel Community. And it has also a European Court of Human Rights that focuses on minority issues, treatment of minorities, refugee issues, very sensitive, emotional nationalist topics that generate intense nationalist responses. And you know, Marie, I think you're the only non-Korean in the class. South Koreans are also very, very sensitive about these issues. There were news reports 2 or 3 years ago about how refugees from Yemen, the Arab country of Yemen, were coming to Jeju Island. Jeju Island is an island off the coast of Korea that's kind of a vacation spot for many people to go to. And there were special visa freedoms that allowed people to go to Jeju Island without much trouble, less trouble than coming to Seoul, less legal requirements than to come to, say, the mainland of the Korean nation here in Seoul. And so Arabs from Yemen were coming to Jeju Island, and then once they got to Jeju Island, they were claiming asylum. And the Korean government responded very hostilely to that. And I asked our Korean students, do they support accepting more refugees? And they said no. So even South Korea is dealing with this refugee issue of people coming from the turbulent Middle East. But the European Court of Human Rights has ordered or decided, not the European Court of Justice, this is separate, the European Court of Human Rights, which is separate from the European Union, to provide these refugees with food, clothing, and medical care under, I think, partly the 1951 Asylum Convention. But Poland has rejected the ruling of the European Court of Human Rights. And it says, and by declaring a state of emergency, Poland has barred journalists and aid workers from coming within 3 kilometers of the border zone of Poland with Belarus. Not content with the media blackout, Poland is also, like neighboring Lithuania, erecting a fence along the border. So there is intense concern that with the new refugee migrants coming in on big waves, next wave, that it's going to further incite support for Eurosceptic far-right parties, like the Poland's Law and Justice Party, which is in power in Poland. It says here, in adopting this stance, the Polish government is following its own example. In 2015, at the height of the crisis, the refugee crisis, the leader of Poland's far-right Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczynski, claimed that Muslim refugees carried parasites. After riding popular fears to electoral success, the party made good on its anti-migrant agenda and refused to accept quotas of refugees assigned by the European Union. It was joined by the Czech Republic and Hungary, whose Prime Minister Viktor Orban began building a wall on Hungary's border with Serbia and Croatia. So we covered earlier in the semester how the European Commission is using the Next Generation Europe money for the COVID-19 pandemic economic recovery funds to try to enforce European Court of Justice, that's not the European Court of Human Rights, rulings regarding Poland's efforts to restrict the freedom of the court system in Poland. And you might recall from that news report that the European Court of Justice and the European Commission were concerned about restrictions on LGBTQ rights, LGBTQ people, and also the independence of the courts. But there was no reference in that report from a few weeks ago that we covered in class about refugees coming from outside of the European Union. Like the European Commission and the European Court of Justice are not threatening to keep the money from Poland and Hungary because of the treatment of refugees. No, it was focusing only on LGBTQ rights and on the independence of the courts of Poland. No reference in that news report about refugees. So what does this tell us? This tells us that the European Union political leaders are aware that politics is the art of the possible. And if you're going to talk about what is possible in political affairs, you have to consider nationalism. So the European Union is not going to attack or criticize Poland for refusing to accept these refugees coming from, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Nigeria, and Cameroon, because Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus is using them as a weapon to punish the European Union for putting economic sanctions on Belarus, on his government in Belarus. It goes on. All of the countries of the European Union are putting up borders to migrants coming from Turkey and Libya. It goes on here. Their approach now seems prophetic in Fortress Europe. Enclosure is now the new normal. In the past 5 years, the bloc has paid Turkey and Libya to keep out migrants and patrol the Mediterranean Sea, while member states of the European Union, including Austria, Greece, and Bulgaria, have installed new border fortifications. The Union is currently working on a financial deal with Afghanistan's neighbors to try to prevent people fleeing the Taliban from coming to Europe. Violent border pushbacks are increasingly common. Illegal measures that critics say are supported by the bloc's border agency Frontex. So this is supposed to be the European Union's common European Union border enforcement police body, Frontex. But the message is clear: newcomers must be turned away no matter the cost. European officials insist such policies are necessary. Ylva Johansson, the European Commissioner for Home Affairs, said in late September that the bloc must stand together to protect our external borders. But what kind of politics is the European Union enabling? And this highlights how the radical right parties in Poland and elsewhere are describing these refugees as sick terrorists who practice deviant behaviors like pedophilia and zoophilia, and playing with fears and hatreds towards these non-white Middle Eastern and African and Muslim refugees trying to come into the European Union. And so people are dying, according to this professor at the Russian East Europe at the European University Institute, I think, which is in Florence, Italy. People are dying. It says here, at least 5 people, according to Polish officials, have already died on the border with Poland. But Piotr Bystrianin, head of Ocalenia Foundation, a Polish refugee charity that is trying to help people stuck at the border, told me the real number is unknown and probably higher. So he said the case of a 16-year-old boy from Iraq whose family called Ocalene after being pushed back into the forest in Belarus. At the time of contact, the boy was vomiting blood. In the morning, the organization learned that he was dead. And so many more are likely to perish as we go into fall and the weather gets cold up there in Northeast Europe. So that's why I was asking you, do you think that this threat of migration coming into the European Union will, like with the United Kingdom, with the Brexit referendum in the United Kingdom, will encourage other countries to leave the European Union? And it seems that the European Union leaders are worried about this. So they're not really stopping the Polish people, the Polish border police or the Croatian border police and others from keeping these people out. They're not using the Next Generation European Union Corona-19 pandemic economic recovery funds from Next Generation Europe to push or enforce the asylum convention rights of these refugees. They're really focusing on LGBTQ rights and on freedom, independence of the Polish courts. But there's no reports I'm seeing about them threatening to push Poland, for example, to accept its quota of refugees that were agreed back 6 years ago in 2015, 2016. Poland and Hungary were supposed to accept a certain number of those refugees coming into Europe in 2015 to 2016. It was agreed according to majority vote of the European Union. It did not require all 27 member states to agree. It was agreed through a procedure that relied upon majority voting. And so Poland and Hungary were in the minority. It was adopted by the European Union that all the countries were supposed to adopt a certain number of refugees, and Poland and Hungary said, no, we're not accepting any anyway. So is Poland and Hungary being punished? We're not seeing any news reports that they're being punished economically for that. I did see a news report that Frontex was in Hungary, and then several months ago this year, Frontex, the European Union agency for enforcement of the border, they withdrew all of their personnel, their police, their individuals their resources, their money from Hungary. But I don't see news reports about Hungary being punished for refusing to accept refugees. So the European Union is really understands that this is a nationalist issue. And if the European Union tries to make Poland accept these refugees coming in from Belarus, or tries to accept that it could be a disaster, political disaster for the European Union. So, okay, so let me tell you what I wrote. I flipped a coin and I was neutral, cannot decide, right? So I think that one of the non-Euro member states, so one of the countries of the European Union that's not in the Eurozone, remember, Poland and Hungary are not yet in the Eurozone. Poland and Hungary are not yet in the Eurozone, right? Will leave the European Union because of the migration issue. That this is only going to get worse. Lukashenko is going to keep trying to push more and more refugees into Poland and Lithuania. I mean, let's look at what Belarus has. Let's see if we can find a map of Belarus on the on Wikipedia, just to show you here. So we go Belarus, and we look for Belarus, and you can see that's got this tiny little country here. Let me see if I can make this bigger. So we go to share and share screen, and there you see Belarus. And so Belarus has got a border with Latvia and Lithuania. They're all in, these are the Baltic states. You see Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia. It's got a border with Poland here. This little tiny piece of a country here, if I can make it bigger. Oh, I can, yeah. This is part of Russia. This little area is Kaliningrad. It used to be called Königsberg. It was a city in Prussia. And then after World War II, Stalin moved around populations and borders. So even though this is Lithuania, and this is Latvia, this territory is part of Russia. So here's Belarus, here's Ukraine, here's Russia. So Belarus is allied with Russia, and here's Hungary. So I said that I think that Poland is unlikely to leave, less likely to leave the European Union, because not only because of the economic money it gets from the common agricultural policy, but also because it has a border with Russia. And Polish people generally don't like Russia. They don't like Russia more than they don't like Germany because of the legacy of communism. But here's Hungary under Viktor Orban, and Hungary doesn't have a border with Russia. Hungary has a small border with Ukraine, but it doesn't have a border with Russia. So I think forcing these countries, Poland and Hungary, to accept refugees will probably push Hungary to be more likely to leave the European Union because it does not share a border with Russia. Hungary does not share a border with Russia. And of course, now that Britain has left the European Union, Hungary, or a country that does leave the European Union, might try to reach a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom, with Great Britain. And of course, if the United Kingdom makes a free trade agreement with the United States, it's already got a free trade agreement with Canada. That might be something that nationalists in these countries believe that, well, the European Union is making us accept refugees and we don't want them, so we're going to leave, and then we're going to cooperate more closely with the United Kingdom and Canada and the United States and so on. And so that's a danger. And evidently we know that's a danger because the European Union, based here in Belgium, in Brussels, Belgium, is not threatening or trying to coerce Poland and Hungary in accepting refugees. That's not what they're trying to enforce with the next generation coronavirus pandemic money, which is really interesting. And that just hit me this morning, right? That the European Union is trying to enforce the rulings requiring Poland not to restrict the freedom of its judicial system to control politically the courts in Poland, and is also trying to fight corruption in Hungary. But they're not trying to force these two countries to accept their migrant quotas that was agreed back in 2015, 2016. That doesn't come up, which is interesting because it shows you the European Union is aware that migration is the hot button sensitivity topic, which far-right parties throughout the European Union use to try to support them and then blame the European Union on, blame the migration coming into their country from North Africa or the Middle East on the European Union. That because Italy's in the European Union, migrants try to come to Italy because they think if they get to Italy, they can get to Germany, or they can get to Sweden, or they can get to Norway and find a good job. Even if they can't find a job in Italy, still, because Italy's in the European Union, they can get to Italy, then they have the ease of travel to try to get to Germany or other countries in the European Union. So, and this concern seems, I would think, is why we are seeing that the European Union is not attempting to make Poland fulfill its treaty obligations regarding its European Union obligations regarding migration into Poland, migrants settling in Poland and Hungary. So on that note, let's go then to the vote and ask you, after all of this debate discussion, do you think, and make sure, let me see if you can make sure that you're actually seeing that, share screen. Do you think that at least one more country will leave the European Union? So, or strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide. So please vote, and you have 20 seconds. So 2 people have voted, the other 2 have not. Oh, 4 of you voted. So 4 of you disagree. And I would agree with you. I disagree as well, because you can see the European Union is not forcing the migration issue, even though it's very cruel and brutal. I mean, people are going to die in Belarus. And of course, if you're the Polish government, you can say, well, that's Belarus's fault. That's Lukashenko's fault. That's not our fault. That's the government of Belarus under Lukashenko doing that. That's not our fault. He's the bad guy, not us. He has to take care of these people. If he brought them into the country, then he has to take care of them. He has to deal with the consequences of his decisions, not us. It's his responsibility. But nevertheless, people are still going to die in Belarus as they wait to try to get across the border. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be an increasing crisis. Probably, I would think that Belarus is going to stop accepting the migrants. They're just going to stop people from flying into Belarus from these other countries, because they typically have to, they have to fly on a plane to get here from Afghanistan or these other places. They have to fly on an aircraft to get to Belarus. And so they won't accept them anymore. Well, we'll see. Okay, so how does this relate to the notes for today? So let me go open up the notes, and regarding the European Court of Justice, and making sure that difference that you understand exists between the Council of Europe Human Rights Organization and the European Union. And so the European Court of Justice has been focusing primarily, as we covered on previous classes, on economic issues, on creating a single market. And that means harmonizing and standardizing all the rules and regulations, for example, regarding beer. What is beer? And can you label something beer, even if it doesn't follow German laws as to what beer must only contain if you're an Italian company making beer that you want to sell in Germany, for example. The European Court of Justice has played an important role, and we covered this earlier. But I highlighted how there is a difference between the Council of Europe and the European Union, but there is increasing movement towards incorporating the human rights framework of the Council of Europe into the European Union. And that happens through the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is the beginnings of efforts to incorporate into European Union law, and therefore the rulings of the European Court of Justice, the human rights law, body of law established in the Council of Europe. And again, according to neo-functional spillover, you might predict that to happen. right? Because if you're going to have a truly single market in the European Union, then eventually you have to deal with the rights of workers and coming up with standard rights and social and economic rights of labor, of people that work, human resources are human being labor resources, along with financial resources, free movement of goods and services across the European Union. You're going to have free movement of labor among the member states of the European Union. Then if you want to encourage that free movement of labor, you have to eventually talk about, for example, how you come up with a common European rules regarding pensions, and how do you contribute to individual retirement pensions for workers if they move from one country to another country in the European Union? How do you pay into their own pension system so that when they retire, the time they spent working in Italy and Hungary and Poland all comes together to calculate what their retirement pension is when they retire from the workforce? And if you want to be more proactive, if you want to come up with a truly single labor market, then you have to come up with requirements to remove barriers to women, for example, working in different countries in the European Union. In one, a country might have stronger protections against discrimination against women because women become pregnant, right? And they work in the labor force. So some countries have a strong protection of the rights of women to demand paid leave from work while they're giving birth or raising a child, that a newborn, and other countries have less privileges and protections for women who have given birth to a new baby. So sooner or later, the European Court of Justice and the European Union more generally has to deal with those issues if it's going to come with a truly single market for labor, right? And they were moving in that direction with the incorporation of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is based upon the Council of Europe's Human Rights Law. The Council of Europe's Human Rights Law. In 1950, the Council of Europe adopted the European Convention on Human Rights. Again, this is outside of the European Coal and Steel Community. And it aimed to protect basic freedoms and human rights. Keep in mind, this is a very sensitive topic, just 5 years after the horrors of World War II and the horrible systemic human rights violations. So this is a very sensitive topic. And all of the member states today of what are the European Union signed this European Convention on Human Rights because the Council of Europe is bigger, much bigger than the European Union. It's I think 54 countries. You know, everybody has a. Well, let's look. Council of Europe. What is the Council of Europe? Of course, everybody has a nice Wikipedia page. So we look at the Council of. This is the Council of Europe. And so it's not the same as the European Council. Of course, the European Council is the name for the meeting of the heads of state and government of the European Union. The Council of Europe is distinct from the European Union. What does it say here? It's got 47 member states. 47 member states. There you see all the countries that belong to the Council of Europe, including Russia, not including Belarus. Now that's interesting. I think Belarus was expelled. But Russia's part of it. So is Turkey. And the Caucasus countries, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. It looks like Kyrgyzstan is not part of it. I thought Kyrgyzstan was part of it, Maria. Kazakhstan is not, really? I thought they were part of it. Well, they may have applied to join. So back to the notes. And so the point I want to highlight in terms of how interesting this is that this increasing movement by the European Union to incorporate into the European Union the body of law from the Council of Europe was also a sensitive topic highlighted in the referendum on voting to leave the European Union in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom supporters of Brexit within the United Kingdom were pointing to this increasing movement by the European Union and therefore the European Court of Justice to begin to enforce on all of the member states of the European Union the human rights requirements in the Council of Europe. and particularly that the European Court of Justice was going to begin to regulate the pensions and labor laws in the United Kingdom too much. That has always been a concern, but it's always been also a very sensitive topic due to British nationalism, because the European Court of Human Rights in the Council of Europe has had for many years a big focus of attention on United Kingdom's treatment of people arrested in the violence in Northern Ireland during the time of troubles in Northern Ireland between the Protestant British nationalists and the Irish Catholic nationalists. The British police and British army have been sued and brought before the European Court of Human Rights many times, relatively speaking, because of claims of abuse by the British police against suspects or people that the British police in Northern Ireland claimed were engaging in terrorism or violence, particularly by on behalf of the Irish Republican Army, the Irish Nationalist Catholic movement. And over the decades, this has been a source of humiliation that until recently, the country experiencing the greatest number of lawsuits before the European Court of Human Rights was Great Britain, because of what was going on in Northern Ireland. So when in the 2016 Brexit referendum vote, pro-Brexit leaders favoring Britain leaving the European Union were claiming that, oh my God, now the European Court of Justice is going to do to us what the European Court of Human Rights is doing. They're going to interfere in our internal affairs, and they're going to embarrass us and humiliate us because of the incorporation of the European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights, which is based upon the Council of Europe's human rights law, into the European Union law. So just to give you some background here, in 1996, the European Court of Justice ruled that the European Union treaties did not give the European Union the legal power to accede to the European Convention. So the European Court of Justice ruled 25 years ago that the European Union could not itself sign and join the European Convention on Human Rights. So that meant that what the European Union member states then did on the initiative of Germany was that, okay, the European Union will incorporate these human rights principles into their own European Union law through the Charter of Fundamental Rights. And this was adopted at the Cologne European Council, the meeting of the heads of state of the European Union in 1999, so that's 22 years ago. And it was agreed with with 62 individual representatives from the member states, and it was at the Cologne European Council with the European Parliament and the national legislatures, also representatives of the national legislatures of the member states. It met in December 1999, and it produced a draft, a convention. This convention met in 1999, December 1999, and it produced a draft charter, which was adopted in December 2000. And the charter emphasized freedom of thought, assembly, expression, religion, yay, the right of all EU citizens to education, asylum, property, equality before the law, a fair and public trial, freedom of movement within the European Union, access to healthcare and social security. So this was a big focus of the pro-Brexit vote campaign, that this Charter of Fundamental Rights was going to make Britain spend more money on social welfare policies, that therefore increase the amount of taxes on British people and British businesses to pay for these greater social welfare policies, that this was going to make Britain, I'm not saying this is true, but these were the words and the rhetoric that the pro-Brexit people were arguing, that the European Union was going to make Britain become more and more like France and Italy and Germany in terms of having stronger, more restrictive labor rules and labor protections, and that would undermine the British economic prosperity that Britain has been very proud of since Margaret Thatcher became prime minister over 30 years ago in Great Britain. it was going to protect workers, to engage in, protect them to engage in collective bargaining and collective action. And it was a solemn declaration rather than a legally binding treaty obligation. But the Charter of Fundamental Rights was to be incorporated into the draft European Constitution, which didn't pass, of course. It wasn't adopted. It generated some controversy regarding creation of new obligations that would lessen national sovereignty. And as a result, unelected judges would acquire more authority over some issues that elected officials should decide regarding social and labor policy. And the Lisbon Treaty that came into effect in 2009 after the draft constitution was rejected adopted the Charter of Fundamental Rights as a solemn declaration. But in Article 6 of the Lisbon Treaty, it states that the Charter has the same legal value as the treaties. So this was another trigger for the Brexit referendum. And it passed. So let me go back here. I want to have another exercise before we go to our debate. And yeah, these issues of nationalism, and the reason why the Polish people wanted to, the Polish right-wing party, Law and Justice Party, wants control over political control over the Polish courts, is because they claim the Polish courts are protecting the former communists and the children of the former communists in terms of the economic wealth and prosperity that they have amassed, that acquired during and after communism. That as communism came into force, you had these traitors who collaborated with the Russian communists and did terrible things to Poland. And then they became part of the ruling traitor elite, sort of like Polish Chinilpa. Chinilpa, Maria, is the term that Koreans used to describe Korean collaborators during the Japanese occupation of Korea from 1910 to 1945. That these Polish collaborators then used their networks and connections to become the new business class of the new post-communist Poland and Hungary and other countries, and use their connections, their corrupt connections and networks of to become rich and prosperous people that now they're the leading business figures in Poland, because they are the ones that were at the elite under the end of communism. And it's not fair. And the Polish courts are supposed to be protecting those people and protecting their children who are still benefiting from their collaboration. And I just wanted to highlight that I looked up something yesterday on the Korean media to show you how you have these similar concerns of issues in Korea, right? This is from March of this year. It states here that Japanese collaborators are sued over real estate assets. So this was a long time ago, right? These people that collaborate with Japan are all dead, but their children and grandchildren are not dead. And they're still rich and prosperous because of the collaboration of their parents and grandparents with the Japanese. And so it's a very sensitive topic here in Korea. And this is nationalism, right? It's not fair that these people or these children of these people continue to be rich and prosperous because their parents betrayed Korea. And they mentioned here in this news report from just the spring, the 4 collaborators highlighted named Lee Hae-sung, Lee Ki-young, Lee Kyun-hung, and Hong Sung-muk were included on the list of being involved in Japan's colonial rule of the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945. They were recognized and given roles by the Japanese imperial regime for their activities under colonial rule. And so they're confiscating, the Korean government wants to confiscate the assets of their descendants. And they've been fighting about this in the Korean government, and the Korean courts have been fighting over this. And finally, the Korean courts have pretty much acquiesced to the legality of the Korean government moving to take away these resources. And we'll see what happens if the next elections, if the conservatives come back into power, if they'll stop it. Because when the conservatives are in power, they tend to try to block these efforts to confiscate these assets. So again, I'm just highlighting this, that Koreans can understand this feeling in Poland today, that there should be some consequences. There should be some some justice, that those people collaborated and betrayed Poland and all of the crimes that the Soviet communists committed against Poland, that those people that collaborated, they should pay some price and some benefits be given to those people that fought the communists and overthrew communism. So it just highlights this, and the Constitutional Court ruled in 2011 that the law is constitutional, saying it's necessary to clear away remnants of the colonial period, and this has been going on for years. And so just to show you that this isn't just a European issue. This is an issue of nationalism that goes across nations. And okay, so and let me see here. I have another exercise to try to highlight these issues. Charter, is that what I have here? Let me see where I put this. No, I guess it's not here. Yeah, so I think that, yeah. So I mean, the European Charter of Human Rights is mentioned here. Where I thought I had it here. Just a second. Okay, so here's another exercise, and make sure that you can see this. So share screen and go here, and this is current events. The European Union is a leader in regulating big tech, digital media. It's the world leader in regulating social media companies like Facebook and Google and Microsoft, and also Twitter, but particularly social media. And this is from today's news report in the New York Times. So I think it might be covered in the Korean media about how the US Congress is now investigating how Facebook and other digital companies are seeking to grow their businesses and increase the size of their companies by, according to the critics, encouraging bad psychological behavior and pathologies and psychological sicknesses in children, in order to keep them engaged on Facebook and other digital media by appealing to the people's weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and that this threatens now, the focus here is upon children, right? So this is a person, Frances Haugen is a woman who worked for Facebook, and she's a whistleblower calling attention to the US Congress about what Facebook is doing and other digital media companies in particular, but Facebook in particular, about generating content through automatic artificial intelligence algorithms, formula within the computers to keep people engaged with social media, the Facebook, by appealing to their darkest, the weakest vulnerabilities regarding their self-images, regarding their desire for friendship, to be popular, by stimulating their anger and outrage, in order to keep them engaged with Facebook, which is threatening their mental health, the mental health of people, and also the political stability of the United States, by exacerbating and intensifying, not just in the United States, but in other countries like in Ethiopia and in Myanmar, ethnic tensions, by feeding the most outrageous content available to Facebook users in Ethiopia or Myanmar, because by being outraged and shocked, people spend more time on Facebook. And of course, at the meantime, increasing their hostility, their anger, their stereotyping, their fear, their hatred, and making it easier to mobilize them to do terrible things, like attacking other hated groups of people in Ethiopia or Myanmar. She testified in the United States, in Washington. Now she's coming to Brussels in Europe. Ms. Haugen, a former Facebook product manager who testified Tuesday about the company's internal workings and what she says are its harms to society, has spoken with top policymakers in Brussels, Britain, and France about the need for tougher oversight. She followed her testimony in Washington with a call on Wednesday with Thierry Breton, the European Commissioner in Brussels, who's playing a leading role in drafting European Union legislation meant to curtail the power of the tech companies. And it goes on here. So again, because of the big size of the European Union's market and its wealth, when it adopts regulations regarding any economic sector, any economic business, any business sector, it impacts Korea, America, the whole world, because it is the biggest, richest market in the European Union, in the world, right? So the European Union has for years been seen as the world's leading tech industry regulator on issues including antitrust policy and data privacy. And its rules often serve as a model for other countries. Laws that could be adopted as early as next year would impose tougher rules on how Facebook and other internet companies police their platforms and add stricter competition rules in an effort to diminish their dominance over the digital economy. So these enforcement of these competition rules is undertaken by the Commission, but also by the different agencies that the European Union creates to oversee the enforcement of these new rules. It goes on here. In her testimony, Ms. Haugen outlined several ideas that matched what European Union officials have debated the last year. One of the proposals, the Digital Services Act, includes transparency requirements that Mrs. Haugen called for during her testimony, requiring Facebook and other large tech platforms to disclose details to regulators and outside researchers about their services, algorithms, and content moderation practices. The draft law could also force Facebook and other tech giants to conduct annual risk assessments in areas such as the spread of misinformation and hateful content. Another EU proposal, the Digital Markets Act, would put new competition regulation in place for the biggest tech platforms, including restricting their ability to use their dominance with one product to gain an advantage on rivals in other product category. So like, for example, Amazon. Everybody uses Amazon to sell their products in the United States. So Amazon might say, well, we can make our own products and sell them as Amazon products and use our market dominance for advertising and shopping online. And Amazon, new company in Amazon making anything, cosmetics or toiletries or whatever, that Amazon uses its control of information regarding its shoppers, its online shoppers, and its size of its platform to move into new product areas to produce Amazon products to make even more money by pushing out the competition that is while using the information that they have gathered from shoppers, because they know what shoppers want, and everybody's using Amazon. I mean, in the United States, everybody uses Amazon to shop. In Korea, of course, they have Coupon. But in the United States is Amazon. Christine Schaudermeier, so here again, you see how the different bodies of the European Union are playing a role in this process of trying to come up with new laws to regulate the big tech companies. So there's a reference here to a Danish member of the European Parliament. So the European Parliament, along with the European Commission, has to play a critical role in deciding what these European Union laws and regulations on Facebook will be. And there's no reference of the Council of Ministers here, but of course the Council of Ministers also has to agree through majority vote to any proposal prepared by the European Commission. And you see you see references to these proposals. So this has been proposed by the European Commission. And it seems to be that in these news reports, this news report and the other news report, there's not much discussion of the Council of Ministers, as if the European Commission would not have prepared this proposal or any proposal. And you know, the European Commission has the formal right, sole right to initiate a legislative proposal, the European Commission. The European Commission would never initiate a proposal unless the Council of Ministers or the Council of the European Union wanted it to. That seems to be the assumption. All of these New York Times reports that we already know the Council of Ministers is going to vote in favor of this. unless the parliament changes it too much. Question is the European Parliament going to approve it? Because again, I keep seeing references to a Danish member of the European Parliament, a German member of the European Parliament. You see references to the European Commission members. There you see Vera Jourova, a European Commission Vice President. Never see any references to the Council of the European Union, or the Council of Ministers, as it's also called. As if, well, of course, it's already, they're already going to approve it because the European Commission made the proposal because the Council of Ministers wanted them to make that proposal. So the question is, what is the European Parliament going to do? How are they going to amend it? How are they going to change it? Are they going to approve it? You see that again and again and again in these news reports. So it goes on here, Ms. Haugen, who's now going to talk with the Europeans. The conversation with Ms. Haugen and Vera Jourova, I think she's Bulgarian. This conversation confirmed to me that Europe's direction on the tech is the right one. Ms. Jourova said on Twitter, we need to provide rules and make platforms more accountable. And it says here, Ms. Haugen is scheduled to travel to Europe in the coming weeks. She is slated to meet with European Union policymakers about new proposals to regulate social media and to speak at an industry conference web summit that starts November 1st in Portugal. She's also going to meet with a British committee. So Britain is no longer in the European Union, but the European Union and Britain and United States are all talking with each other and communicating with each other regarding common positions regarding big tech. Now, keep in mind, and that goes to the topic that we want to highlight here. These are American companies. These are flagship companies that are the pride of American ingenuity, American capitalism, that are created by Americans in the United States, in Silicon Valley, in other words, in California, and that have transformed much of the world. Facebook, Amazon, and the other companies like Microsoft. And so when Donald Trump was president, Donald Trump administration was threatening any European country that was promising or planning on regulating these big American tech companies like Amazon and Facebook by threatening them with retaliation and tariffs, trade tariffs on French products. If France, for example, tried to put a tax on purchases on internet platforms like Amazon. And now the Biden administration is in office, replacing Donald Trump. And now there's more talk about cooperating, but it's still a sensitive topic, right? Because these are American companies. You know what, a couple of days ago, I checked my Facebook account when I got up in the morning and Facebook was down, right? I don't know, you might've noticed that, some of you, that Facebook was out of action for several hours, for 5 hours. And it evidently disrupted the entire world, not just the world politics and world society, but also world business, because so many businesses and small businesses rely upon Facebook to get orders for their products and to advertise on Facebook. So many companies around the whole planet use Facebook as for their advertising and online ordering. And when Facebook went down for 5 hours, it disrupted the entire world economy because people all over the world use Facebook to advertise and sell their products and take orders online. Like, wow, Facebook, it's really integrating the global economy. I mean, if you're a small business in Africa or a small business in Latin America, not to mention United States, like my niece, she's selling baked goods on Facebook. She's got her own little pastry business that she started a few months ago on Facebook. That the whole world relies upon Facebook. And this is an American achievement. I'm trying to highlight nationalism, nationalism, nationalism. So it goes on here and concludes, in Brussels, the tech industry spends more than any other sector lobbying the European Union. And that means particularly negotiating with European Parliament and other organizations, but that means trying to lobby the European Parliament, right? So it says the big tech industry spends more than any other sector lobbying the European Union above the drug, pharmaceutical, fossil fuel, finance, and chemicals industry, according to Corporate Europe Observatory and Watchdog Group. So big tech, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Twitter, they spend more money lobbying on lobbyists, paying lobbyists to communicate and pressure the European Union Parliament, the European Commission, the member state governments of the European Union to get what they want, more so than even the big drug companies or the oil and gas companies or the banks or the chemical industries. Wow. And this, again, this is an American achievement. Biban Kidron, who is helping draft Britain's online harms legislation, said that European policymakers must act quickly, but that the most meaningful changes would come if new laws were adopted in the United States. Only when American parents say they have had enough and American lawmakers work together across the aisle will be able to build the digital world that children deserve. So that's the big focus on the American attack on Facebook now by Ms. Haugen, that it's threatening the mental health of children, particularly girls, right? They're emphasizing how Instagram and other social media are threatening girls by making girls feel bad about their appearance, because of course women are socialized to be more concerned about physical appearance and they're being controlled and so on. So that's the big focus that is being used now to attack Facebook. The Facebook is threatening children's mental health. So I would like your response to this question. The United States will adopt a new far-reaching regulation of digital social media companies before the European Union does. Do you think the United States will act before the European Union, or will the European Union act first? So the United States will adopt new far-reaching regulation of digital social media companies before the European Union does. So let's just go directly to the vote, because I want to leave enough time for our debate here. So we go to our cyber campus and we go to share screen and go back to share the cyber campus site, vote. And so please vote on whether or not you agree or disagree with the statement. The United States will adopt new far-reaching regulation of digital social media companies before the European Union does. Will the US do it before European Union? So please vote, and you have 30 seconds. $15 seconds. One more person should vote. Okay, time's up. I have to tell you, I don't think the Americans are going to act. These are American companies. To restrict American companies from making more profit, more money, while they dominate the world's social media industry, I don't think the Americans are going to act. I mean, the Democrats control the US government, but they have very thin, small majority in the Congress, in the Senate and the House of Representatives. I think, the Congress, US Congress has to pass legislation to regulate the social media companies. And I don't think they're going to, I doubt that they will do it before the European Union does, because it's too politically sensitive in the United States. I mean, to punish American companies so as to allow, for example, European companies to have more influence and more control over social media. I'm kind of skeptical. I really am kind of skeptical that the Americans will act before the European Union does. I would disagree. I think the European Union is going to have to do something first. Now, maybe be pretty mild, but the United States doesn't want its national champion companies being punished by Europeans or other countries. Okay, so we need to stop on this and then go to our debate. And so we go back to assignments, and here is the topic. So to South Koreans, the euro is equal to the US dollar as one of the world's global currencies. So I'm going to keep time, even though I'm the one also participating in the debate, because I don't think anybody else here knows how the format that I'm familiar with or that we're using here. So I'm going to use, I'm going to keep time even as I debate. So I'm going to speak for, the rules of the debate are that the pro speaks for 6 minutes maximum, then con speaks for 6 minutes maximum, then pro rebuts for 4 minutes maximum, then con rebuts and concludes for 7 minutes maximum, and then pro has the last word for 3 minutes maximum. So I'm going to make my opening statement, and then you're all going to vote, as you can see here, on who won the debate topic. And it'll be anonymous. So let me go back to the assignments, and this is the debate topic. And so I'm going to start speaking now, and I'm going to start, and I'm going to make my opening statement now. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think clearly the euro is now equal to the US dollar on the world's global currencies, because we see the ability of the European Union to sell hundreds of billions of dollars of euro bonds on international financial markets. And this is going to be more and more appealing to more and more countries, because the Chinese certainly do not want the American dollar to continue to be the dominant currency on global currency markets. And the Chinese renminbi has been identified, has been formally recognized by the International Monetary Fund as one of the leading currencies, the basket of currencies that are the foundation of the world financial system. This was decided a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, that the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, was going to include the Japanese yen, the euro, the dollar, and the British pound, and also the renminbi, the Chinese currency, into its basket in calculating what we'll call special drawing rights, SDRs, that all of the member states of the European Union have the right to withdraw a certain amount of capital from the IMF if they're having trouble paying for their imports. And in calculating the amount of money that they're able to borrow, including Chinese money or dollars or euros, the IMF included the Chinese currency into this basket of currencies. And I think I can even show it to you here if I can recall it, special drawing rights that hopefully, Wikipedia has everything. Yeah, here, okay, so let me stop share and show it to you here. So here's the proof of my argument that it says here, the value of a special drawing right, the value of SDR is based on a basket of key international currencies reviewed by the IMF every 5 years. The weights assigned to each currency in the XDR basket are just to take account of their current prominence in terms of international trade and national foreign exchange reserves. In the review conducted in November 2015, so 6 years ago, the IMF decided to add the renminbi, Chinese yuan, to the basket effective in 2016. And so since that date, the XDR, which is the currency code, it's just the special drawing rights, consists of 5 currencies: the dollar, the euro, the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, and the British pound. So certainly the Chinese euro is equal to anybody else in terms of its value on international business and financial markets. And it's going to increase because the Chinese are going to encourage the European Union to develop further, because it's in their interest to encourage the European Union to develop further because of their conflict with the United States. And so let me go back to the question, and so you can see the question. Make sure you can see the question again. And so if the renminbi and the Japanese yen are part of the 5 fundamental currencies of the European Union, of the international financial system, the euro is equal to the US dollar. You can you honestly believe, I mean, if you go to Europe you can use euros in any country that's not in the European Union. You can use euros in even in countries that are not in the Eurozone, in the European Union. Like if you go to Bulgaria, you can pay in euros. You can pay more easily in Bulgaria in euros than you can in dollars, because the Bulgarians are part of the European Union, and they are willing to take payment in euros if you go to a restaurant or a store. You can in Turkey you can pay in euros. In the countries that want to join the European Union, like Albania and Montenegro. Montenegro has already officially adopted the euro as its currency, although the European Union is not happy about that. The euro is the currency of Montenegro, which just joined NATO a couple of years ago, and now is applying to join the European Union. So any country that's not in the Eurozone, in the 27 European Union member states, you can use euros to pay for anything. And countries that are seeking to become closer to the European Union, they want to use euros. So, I mean, euro might not be the most dominant currency that you encounter in Southeast Asia, for example, but still, I mean, when you think about the region around Europe and its European neighborhood policy, the European efforts to spread European influence in its neighborhood around it, the euro is probably more important than the dollar in shaping their behavior, including in Russia. So I think my time is up, and so I will now turn over the floor to Maria. Go, Marie.
Okay, thank you. So first I'm going to talk about how the US dollar was created first compared to the euro. So I think it's obviously more important in history than the euro is now. And the strength of the US economy supports also the value of the dollar. And that's like one of the reasons the dollar is the most powerful currency now. Also, in the foreign exchange market, the dollar rules, and around 90% of forex trading involves the US dollar. So a lot of trading, a lot of trading exists because of the US dollar, and it's important for the circulation of the currencies. And then compared to the euro is used in 19 Eurozone states out of the 27 EU member states, and that creates a Eurozone. But the US dollar is the currency in the United States, and they are both like in the top 2 of world traded currencies. But if we compare the two, the US dollar wins, I feel like, at how much it's used worldwide. And also the inflation rate of the euro is less than the dollar, with 1.9%, whereas the dollar has an inflation rate of 2.16%. And I also think if we talk about values instead of worth, I think that the euro represents more of a unity, and it unites all the member states that use the euro. And as the European Union is created by a treaty, it's even more important that they have that kind of value, that kind of front. And it's not the same as US, because that was created by a constitution. And so even though the dollar is like the most traded currency in the world, I think the euro represents, again, more unity and signs of peace, and being more of a worthy alliance among all member states. Also, the European Central Bank is more independent from national governments compared to other banks, and they set monetary policy for the Eurozone. And because of that, the euro got stronger, especially as it played like a big role in European sovereign debt crisis. But then also, if we look at the dollar also was also getting stronger after their crisis. So I don't have more to say than that, to be honest.
Okay, those of you, of course, if you have something to share on the screen, I can always allow you to share the screen, so you can share your screen the way I share my screen.
No, I don't.
Okay, but
usually-
so also anybody who has questions, you're welcome to ask a question at any time to me or to Marie. And if you don't have questions, then I am going to go ahead and make my opening, my rebuttal for 4 minutes to Marie, and I'll start now. Well, you know, I think Marie, you're highlighting the point that I was trying to make here, that the European Union is equal to the U.S. dollar on the world's current as one of the world's global currencies because of the as you highlighted, the fact that the European Union is not seen as a threat. I mean, if you're using dollars, you are held in a lot of ways in a stranglehold by the United States because if, for example, the world does business in dollars and the United States doesn't like a particular country like Iran, it will say anybody who does business with Iran cannot use American dollars because if they use American dollars, they're going to go through an American bank. And American banks cannot support terrorism. In Iran, America declares Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. So no American bank, no American financial institution will do business with any country that is doing business with Iran because that bank will be, if they use dollars, that bank will risk being punished by the US government for doing business with a state sponsor of terrorism. And of course, we know that, you know, a country that's designated by the United States as a state sponsor of terrorism, that's a political designation because it affects America's interests. And but the European Union, although of course the European Union might be seen as too close to the United States, it's not seen as a nation state. The European Union is not seen as representing German hegemony or the desire of the Europeans to dominate the Middle East. It's not seen in that way. So consequently, there's more of a willingness to cooperate and work with the Europeans to engage in fruitful business and trade with them with less political danger and political restrictions that make the euro a more preferable currency to do business with. I mean, the only reason why the Europeans are not more engaged in European and international business is with Iran and other countries is because the Americans don't want them to. But there are limits to that. And so, for example, we see the Europeans are willing to continue to promote economic energy ties with Russia. They completed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Germany's biggest trade partner is with China. And this is a concern to the Americans. And now under the Biden administration is trying to push the Europeans to adopting a more confrontational policy with China. We'll see if that happens because you know that's a big threat and danger, particularly since the Americans' political stability of the American political regime is questionable. I mean, Donald Trump still dominates the Republican Party in the United States. And the Republican Party probably will make gains in the next upcoming November elections in the United States in November 2022. And and that means Donald Trump, he's probably going to run for president again in 2024. Even if he does not win, though, he still dominates the Republican Party. So the future belongs to the European Union. The future belongs to the euro. It doesn't belong to this increasingly unstable United States that is more polarized, more volatile. We'll see if it's even able to deal with its global climate change obligations that the Biden administration wants to adopt. So, okay, Marie, you have rebuttal and conclusion for 7 minutes maximum.
Okay, so I agree with what you're saying. Of the like that if a country doesn't want to do business with America, they can just cut them off. I agree with you on that part, but wait, I lost what I was saying. I think just in general, because I am from Europe, I'm from Belgium, I think the euro is more of value to me. Like I obviously use it all the time, so it's more value to me. But I think if we look at it like more of a black on white aspect, then the dollar is worth more and also the most powerful one. So they're kind of equal if we look at it from a worldwide aspect. But if you look at it from black on white grounds, then I think the dollar is obviously the more important one. But yeah, again, I think that the euro really represents more kind of a unity and more value to most people worldwide. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, again, anybody can ask a question. And, you know, I used to give extra credit points. So if somebody wants to ask a question, they get an extra credit participation point during the student debates. And, you know, I will have to check. I would like to check to see who is buying those Euro bonds. So the European Union started in June selling tens of billions of dollars of Euro bonds for the next generation European Union coronavirus pandemic response recovery program. And the reason I ask that is because when the euro was launched, the Chinese were really supportive. The Chinese stated they would be willing to purchase, they were willing to acquire lots of euros for as their part of their currency reserves that they would like to have in their banks. And as a statement, partly in order to support the development of the euro, in part to lessen the predominance of the dollar as the de facto currency for doing business in international trade. And so it would be interesting to see who bought those euro bonds, who is buying those tens of billions of euro bonds, up to $800 billion in euro bonds. Well, yeah, I think it's 800 billion euro bonds that the European Union is selling. Are the Chinese investors? Are they Chinese banks? I don't know. I haven't investigated. I could, you know, type the question into Google and begin to try to find out, unless, of course, the buyers of these bonds are trying to hide their identity. Somebody's buying these bonds because obviously because the European Euro bonds return rate in terms of the investment is very low. It's even less than the US Treasury bond return rate in terms of what the US Treasury is offering as an interest rate on its 10-year Treasury bonds that it sells to investors to get loans to cover the US budget deficit. It's less. Euro bonds, in other words, the international business community collectively views Euro bonds as a safe investment, even safer than US Treasury bonds. And that's interesting. I mean, that's really interesting because you can make the point that America is a volatile place. I mean, if you're politically volatile, if you're following what's going on, for example, now in the current issues about whether or not the United States is going to continue to pay its debts and maybe default. I mean, I don't know how much that's being covered in the Korean media, but it might be covered because it will affect the entire world economy, of course. But if the U.S. doesn't raise if the Congress of the United States doesn't raise the limit on how much the U.S. can borrow, the U.S. will begin to run out of money to pay its debts, and they didn't do that by today. Well, they say it needs to be passed by today. The deadline is October 18. And this is causing the stock market to go up and down. But if you're an investor and you look at what's going on in the United States with Donald Trump and January 6th insurrection, and you compare with the Eurozone, I mean, the Eurozone, for those countries that are in the Eurozone, it looks pretty stable. I mean, what is the political threat to the Eurozone? Marine Le Pen winning the presidency of France in the next elections next year? Well, even she's not saying that she wants to leave the Eurozone. She's saying she doesn't want to leave the European Union. She doesn't want to leave the Eurozone. She wants to stop immigration, which, by the way, as I just realized, the European Union, in fact, accepts. They're not making the Polish government accept migrants. They're not making the Polish government accept applications for asylum by refugees from Belarus. So if Marine Le Pen does become president and she tries to restrict immigration, they're already restricting immigration de facto in the European Union. So I would bet that we're going to see the euro rise in importance, particularly after the next November elections in November 2022, because if the Republican Party, dominated by Donald Trump, will probably take control of at least one house of the US Congress, the House of Representatives or the Senate, the two houses of the US Congress. And they're evenly split now. And it almost always happens that the party controlling the White House will lose seats in the midterm elections between the elections for president. So we had the elections in 2020 for president, then there's the Congress elections in 2022, and then the president elections in 2024. And I would expect that the Republicans are going to take control over one house of Congress, and then the US government's ability to adopt new laws and legislation will pretty much stop. There won't be much of anything important adopted by the US Congress. If it's anything's going to be adopted now, adopted by the US Congress, it has to be adopted now over the next 12 months. Even sooner, because campaign for the next elections is going to start early next year. So maybe over the next 6 months, if anything is important, and if you're an investor looking at the United States, say this country, it's not stable. America is not a stable democracy. But you see the European Union is pretty stable, at least the Eurozone. China supports it. So I can imagine that happening. And so we'll see. All right, any questions? And if not, let's go back to the vote. And this vote is anonymous. And we go back to vote and we look here. So.
Do I also have to vote?
Yeah, I have to do something else here. So who won the debate? This is anonymous.
Well, it's hard because most.
Well, it's anonymous. You can vote. I'm not going to know how you voted.
No, but because like most of what I was saying was agreeing with you, but just like at the aspect of which one was more important in history and which one is more used than the other, it's like more black on white. So that's the only
you
thing.
You can change your mind. You can change your mind.
No, I'm not changing my mind. I'm still like in my heart, I agree that euro is like equal to the dollar, but if I just look at it on like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's hard to explain.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, aspirations versus reality. But you know, aspirations, business people, they're all about predicting the future, right? They make business plans. What's going to happen in 5 years? What's going to happen in 10 years? Because then they make those, on the basis of those business predictions, they make business plans.
Yeah, then I definitely think that the euro will rise stronger than the dollar.
Okay. And so please vote. And I forgot to do one other thing. Let me also add another one. Please grade. I forgot to do this. Please grade the debate. I forgot to do this. General vote. So it goes here, and we go make this also to 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And I forgot to set this up because it's been a while. So post result, anonymous, A plus, A, B plus, B, C plus, C plus, C, D plus, D, and F. And it's anonymous. So save. And so please vote on this question. What grade do you give the debate? Please grade the debate. It's anonymous. You have 30 seconds. Everyone grade the debate. And we're waiting for the fourth person. Okay, time's almost up. 15 seconds. Well, okay, that's it for today. And so I'm going to stop the class and you'll get your midterms tomorrow and I'll start sending my comments back on them. Okay? Bye.
Professor,
Yeah,
Professor, me and Owen Tech have a question.
yeah.
You sent me a Google Drive by our students' email at the beginning of the semester,
Right.
but I didn't receive it.
Okay, so let me write down your name and I'll send it to you again, okay?
And I didn't receive the American history.
Okay, US history. Okay.
So could
And-
you please
Yeah,
address my email again?
okay,
Me and Untech.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
And own tech, okay, okay, I'll do that.
Thank you, Professor.
I'll have to do it after the next class. Okay, I'll send it to you this
Thank you.
afternoon. Okay,
Nice. Can I ask a question?
yeah.
I was wondering what the final exam is gonna look like. Is it like a midterm or-
It'll be like the midterm.
just a paper?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
okay,
Thank you.
okay. That's all. Bye.